We're also taking a closer look this morning at election security ahead of the midterms, a polarizing topic of discussion in the wake of the 2020 election. And it's also the focus of the latest installment of Meet the Press Reports, airing tonight right here on NBC News Now. So let's bring in NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor for a preview. It's so good to see you. So what have the implications been of Florida's so-called election police force, Yamiche? Can you first explain what exactly they're doing there and the effect you're seeing it have on voters specifically?
Well, good morning, Zekley. It's a critical question because my story for Meet the Press Reports really centers on this fact. The false claim that the 2020 election was stolen has now become a top and critical GOP talking point, part of the party's larger approach to elections post-2020. National organizations are recruiting poll workers and poll watchers to become part of the election systems across this country, so part of the people counting the ballots this November. The state Republican officials have also been using their power to pass new laws that critics say will be critical in restricting voting access, making it easier to overturn election results, and criminalizing voting in unfair ways. In Florida, in particular, which is what you asked me about, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill in April to create an election police force dedicated to pursuing voter fraud. So far, at least 20 people have been arrested by the unit. Here's a clip featuring the Florida Secretary of State, an interview that I did with him defending the state's actions.
In Florida, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill in April to create an election police force dedicated to pursuing voter fraud. So far, at least 20 people have been arrested by the unit.
When you don't enforce your laws, you encourage more bad behavior.
What do you say to critics who say that the Office of Election Crimes and Security, what some have called the Election Police Force, that was created to establish a false narrative, a political narrative about a problem that doesn't really exist?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just completely inaccurate and belies the truth that there are people that vote that aren't entitled to vote. And every single person that votes that shouldn't undermines someone the legal vote of someone else.
Byrd said the unit is looking at the whole state, but he added that there will be more issues in bigger counties like Miami-Dade, Broward, Hillsborough, and Duval.
So it's just a coincidence right now that you're starting with mostly Democratic, heavily populated areas.
I know what you're trying to say, and that's not what I'm saying. Is that's where the volume is. I mean, Miami-Dade County has 1.5 million voters.
So when critics look at that and say you're going after Democratic-led counties, Democratic-leaning counties, your response is
absolutely false.
But advocates say those arrested did not know they were breaking the law, and that in many cases, government officials had sent them voting materials that allowed them to cast ballots. A number of lawyers for those arrested told us they are fighting the charges in court.
None of these folks should have been arrested in the first place.
So there you have it, really, the advocates saying that these are people who did not know they were breaking the law. In many cases, you had the state of Florida mailing them voting materials in this case. So people were registering to vote and then getting letters from the state, and that's what attorneys told me, and then casting their ballots. And then only years and years or months later were they then arrested in those really shocking videos that were put out by the Tampa Bay Times. Zekley.
I mean, incredibly engaging conversation and reporting also, Yamiche. I know that there are also so-called MAGA, Make America Great Again poll watchers. So can you talk to us about that? Because we've talked about the so-called election police. What are they doing in the midterm election, and what's their role as people head out to vote pretty soon?
Well, we have these outside organizations, including one headed up by Cleta Mitchell, who was a former lawyer for former President Trump, who was trying to overturn the 2020 election. She is now, with a number of other people, trying to organize poll watchers, and they're essentially trying to get people to be the ones that are counting the ballots, conservatives who are counting the ballots. There are some election officials who tell me they're worried about nefarious actors infiltrating their systems. Of course, some Republicans told me that they just want to see how all of this works. They want to take this into account. They don't want to meddle with things. They just want to see how things work. But of course, the real worry here is that things will get too far, that people will get heated, and that Republicans will not want to see Democratic ballots cast. They'll challenge those. And there is some worry that maybe Democratic poll watchers might do the same for Republicans, even though I have to tell you, it's on the Republican side that we're seeing the election deniers and most of the lies about the election.
Yeah, and Yamiche, briefly here, the thread has been election fraud. So how widespread is the belief of election fraud among not voters, but candidates specifically who are running for office this year?
What you're seeing in the Republican Party right now are 2022 candidates leaning in on the election lies of 2020, leaning in on the language of former President Trump, who is continuing to say that the 2020 election was stolen, even though it was free and fair. And there are a number of Republicans, including former Attorney General Bill Barr, who said they looked into these claims and that they were false. But I found a number of candidates, including Carrie Lake in Arizona, who's running for governor, and a number of other candidates who are on the campaign trail, standing alongside former President Trump and making these false claims. And I have to tell you, it's impacting voters and a lot of people wanting to go and stand by. Drop boxes. One voter told me that he was going to go and take his sidearm, that means a weapon, a gun, to drop boxes to watch them. So it's a little scary and dangerous out there for poll workers and poll watchers.
High-stake times. Yamiche Alcindor in Washington, thank you so much. And a programming reminder to everyone, you can watch Meet the Press Report Securing the Vote tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern here on NBC News Now. You can also watch it on demand the next day on Peacock.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.